This is the Phoenix mind, where the fire refines, break the chains and rise to shine. Rise stronger, lead with heart, every end a brand new start. With Lisa Manzo, we transform, we ignite. This is the Phoenix mind.
Hi, I'm Lisa Manzo. Welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Mind podcast. And today my special guest is Rob McCarthy. And let me read you his bio so you can learn all about him. Rob is the founder of the FCK the Standard movement and author of breakout book, FCK the Script. A lifelong blue-collar worker from New York, Rob built his message on hard lessons, family values, and refusal to keep playing by the rules that never worked in the first place. His writing is raw, edgy, unfiltered, cutting through the polished fluff of traditional self-help with no excuses, own your shit mentality. Through his book, newsletter, podcast, and community, Rob inspires everyday people to stop chasing someone else's version of success, instead build a life that actually matters to them. And when he's not writing or speaking, you'll find him with his family, coaching youth sports, or putting in the work on himself the same way he challenges his readers to do. Welcome, Rob, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
This is so cool because, I don't have I want to talk about the FCK the Standard and FCK the Script. Explain to me how you got there.
It was an awakening for myself, really. I'm 45 years old, have a 18-year-old daughter, 15-year-old son, married for almost 20 years. And everything in life was going well, except for how I thought about myself. And it was a deep struggle in that aspect. And then I started to think about things and how my life was going, and I wasn't the one pulling the strings. I wasn't the one writing the script. And I decided to take a step back and see what was actually pulling the strings and writing my script and what I was following. And I came to find out that I was actually playing a role that I never even auditioned for. It was handed to me by my parents, by society, by what everybody else thought I was supposed to be. And I really just looked in myself, and the hardest person you talk to every day is the person you see in the mirror every morning. And I started to realize I was just a shell of who I was supposed to be. And I needed to step back and really start crossing things off and writing my own script in order to be happy.
Well, what's the first thing you crossed off? What's the first thing?
Giving a shit about what other people thought about me. 110%.
Isn't that so interesting? I had a mentor once, and he says it all the time. What he says is, it's none of my business what other people think about me.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, if you look deep into it, it has no impact on your life. I'm not a politician. I'm not garnering anybody's votes. I'm not looking to, impress anybody. And when it comes to the competition side of it was really what hit me more. And it's financially. I'm a blue collar guy. I make enough money to keep my family happy. I'm never going to own a Rolls Royce. I'm never going to take 10 trips a year to the Bahamas and Bali and the Maldives and whatever else. But I always looked at other people and compared myself to them. You don't know what goes on behind other people's four walls. You go on social media, you look at all these things, and everybody posts the highlights. I post pictures of my vacation. It's me and my wife holding hands by the sunset. We're not looking at the fact that she just called me an asshole in the kitchen because I wasn't ready to go when she wanted to leave. So it was one of those things where that was a big part of figuring it out.
I have to agree with you on that because I didn't realize how much, until I started my healing journey, on how much weight I put into what other people thought. And letting that go was really life-changing. And were you a people pleaser too at the same time?
I was. I really was. I did a lot of how I live my life worried about what other people thought. I mean, obviously, there are a few people you have to worry about. Obviously, your family, my wife and kids. My parents, thank God, are still with me. Had to make sure I was doing my job correct, so my boss was happy. But outside of that, what benefit does it give me to walk the line that society says I'm supposed to walk and impress other people?
There's no need to impress anybody. Just your family's what's important and what they think is what matters, right? Because they're the ones that's going to be there for you. And you wrote to me about being on the podcast, and what I found really interesting was what happened with your boss and when you realized you didn't matter to your boss. Do you want to tell that story?
Well, prior to where I am now, which I couldn't be happier, I did 15 years in the Postal Service. And I had worked my way up the line, made my, the normal stuff, do the corporate ladder, make everybody happy. When they say jump, you say how high. And then I watched one of my coworkers. It was a counterpart. I was a postmaster for a local office. One of my counterparts died of a massive heart attack in his office. And his job was posted before the first day of his wake. And I started to realize that, listen, if I die tomorrow here, the only people that are going to miss me are my family. And they're going to step over my body to clock me out so I don't get any extra pay after I'm not doing any work. I started to realize that it was me living somebody else's life and working for somebody else who really didn't care which way was up and what happened to me in any capacity.
And so now you said you're very happy. So apparently you were able to shift that. And how did that work out? How was that shift able to happen? Because that's so cool that you're able to do that.
Well, like I say in the book, it's not a overnight shift. You can't just pick up one day, throw away your job, throw away everything and say, I'm going to spend a month somewhere and collect myself. I hunted for a job while I was in the process of quote unquote retiring at 36 years old. And then I actually turned around and went to a doctor and got diagnosed with stress, burned 6 months of sick leave before I finally put in my retirement papers. And during that time, I picked up a job as a laborer with one of the local municipalities. And over the past 8 years, I've advanced my position to where I am now. I do water and sewer maintenance for a local town. But I go to work, I clock out, I come home, there's no phone calls, there's no emails. If something happens after work, I'm getting paid for it. I'm not doing it part of my, the BS of the salaried employee, where you get paid the same money if you work 20 hours or you work 60 hours.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's no longer a part of my life. And I got to tell you, I'm just a completely different person. And it was all that one morning in the mirror after my coworker's passing where I said, I can't do this.
I'm glad that you became aware that self-awareness is so important. What else have you discovered about self-awareness that's interesting that you find interesting? Because I find self-awareness is the key to change.
I use the terminology owning your own shit. That's the key in the book. I think what happens is you become guilty that you're letting other people down by changing who you are for the positive. You let down the people who think, you're supposed to be out on a Friday night, having dinner, having drinks, doing this, that, and the other thing. You feel guilty that you're leaving the job that you had, that took care of you for me for 15 years, and making a change for me. It's getting over that guilt, and it's understanding that one of the biggest things you have to do when you make any change is you really have to audit your circle. You have to look at the people that drag you down. You have to look at the habits in your life that, while you think they're positive, put you in a comfort zone that is solely for your comfort but not for any benefit. And I think that's one of the biggest things is us falling into that comfort zone, which translates, for lack of a better term, the same bullshit we do every day that we know. And it's not always the most positive.
I like to call that the familiar zone, right?
Yeah.
Because it's what we're used to, right?
Yeah, it's the routine we've gotten accustomed to, and any break from that routine causes us to go into disarray. But what you don't realize is that comfort routine is what's literally slowly killing you. You know, you're not improving when you stay the status quo, and that's what I really took out of the whole experience with me.
It's interesting that you said that you had to look at your circle, and I'm sure you had to let some people go because they had some habits that you weren't no longer in alignment with. Did you find that?
I I cut out a lot of the people that I worked with first and foremost because you come to realize that the people you consider friends at work, very, very few of them would be a friend outside of that environment. And I think we tend to get too personal with people that we work with on a regular basis. They're acquaintances for the most part. I have a couple close friends that I worked with there and that I work with now. And then I have acquaintances, I have coworkers.
Yeah.
So anybody who didn't fall in that friend category for me was gone right off the bat from my first job.
Well, anybody that you don't spend time with outside of work is not your friend. Because your friends you see outside of work and you see it in both areas of your life. If you're not seeing them, they're just your coworkers and your colleagues. And, I got lots of coworkers and colleagues. I don't have any friends at work. I don't think that in this last job that I have that I've ever gone out with somebody outside of work. We're friendly at work and that's it. We're not buddies.
And that kind of it was a thing with a group of us that we would get together on a Saturday night, wives or just us,
Yeah.
whatever, and spouses, I should say, it was husbands and wives. And yeah, that was all cut off. And I started to cut the toxic out of my life too. The people who I only saw in those environments that we were never doing anything positive. It was a Friday night happy hour for 4 hours after work. It was going out to dinner at restaurants that, to be honest, 4 times a month wasn't in our financial structure. And we really never should have been going there in the first place. But you swipe the credit card, you play the role.
Yeah. So did having children change your perspective on life and people pleasing and just everything in general?
Having my daughter was the first child, so I'm going to talk about my daughter obviously because by my son I was already a dad. So one of the biggest realizations that I had to go through, and I actually just told a good friend of mine who had his first child, you're no longer the most important person in the world anymore. And specifically when it came to my wife, I probably dropped down that rung about 5 or 6 levels because my daughter took up the first 5 or 6 levels above me. And we had a dog, so the dog might have been level 7. So I might have sat at level 8 at that point in time. And that's a really difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But once you see your child, your mind goes in a completely different direction. It was the first time I ever looked at somebody and said, you know what, I would dive in front of a bullet for you, and I don't even know you for more than 30 seconds.
And it's such a beautiful thing. I remember after I had my daughter, because my oldest child is a daughter, and in my marriage, my husband once he said to me at the time, he says, this used to be okay. Why isn't it okay now? And I asked him one question. I said, "Would you be okay with a man treating your daughter that way?"
Mm-hmm.
That was the only question I asked him, and he's like, he got it in that instance. We never had to discuss it again. So I told him, I said, "Yeah, I mean, we have a child now. Things have changed because I realize things that I tolerate, I don't want her to tolerate because it." I had no self-esteem at the time, so I tolerated a lot, and didn't want my children to inherit that from me. I wanted better for them.
See, I actually feel terrible for the first serious boyfriend that my daughter has. I really do, because my daughter is a just mirror image of my wife. And my wife's one of the toughest women I've ever met. And she's married to me, so she knows how to keep somebody in their place. I'll tell you that right now. Uh, but no, I agree, and I'm lucky that Fran is Fran's my wife. She's definitely done that work with Kayla and made sure that she knows where she sits and you know what she what she needs to do to maintain control of her situation. When it comes to boys and the like. I tend not to dive too much into the romantic side of things because
That's okay. Yeah, it's all good. We're good. It's just, and it's her short story. It's her story to share, not yours anyway.
right.
Right? So we respect that. Um, yeah, because people ask me about my children. I can share little bits and pieces, but the ultimately is their short story to share. I participated in their story.
Yeah, oh, without a doubt. There's stories. We'll leave it at that.
So, you wrote to me and I was like, you have bipolar disorder and there are everyday challenges that come with that. And I don't know what they are. Even as a nurse, I still don't know what they are. It's everyday challenges. Can you give the audience a little perspective on that? On like, because I have no idea.
It's it's the structure of, we'll call it baseline, right? Normal people walk baseline every day. They have a little high, they get happy. They have an adrenaline rush. They have a low, they go down a little bit. With bipolar disorder, the levels of the highs and the lows just shift so drastically. And you talk about a change having children. That was when I really looked into the fluctuation of mood for me. And that was the first time I really sat back and said, you know what? I need to look at the person in the mirror. I need to structure what I'm doing. I went, did some therapy, medication, doing very well on it. But that was, now that you talk about it, that was actually the first own your shit moment for me when I realized I had to make a change for my positive. And it was also something that, a lot of people don't like talking about. I was always very forward with it. I don't care. It's who I am. It's the same as if I broke my leg. It's the same as if I, you know, lost an eye or, had a scar.
Yeah.
It's the
Part of the
exact same
journey.
thing. And I think more with men than women in a lot of instances, it's looked at like a weakness. And a lot of men don't like to speak about it. And I think that's where we fall into a category of, higher suicide rates. I hate to say that I've had 4 people connected to me in the last 120 days take their own life. All, all friends of mine or acquaintances from college, but 2 people I knew very closely. And it was all guys. And it was one of those things where we're almost afraid to talk about it because it's a weakness.
Yeah, and that's the reason I asked you about it because it's a topic that's not discussed, and if it is discussed, men don't typically share about it. And I was really happy that not that that you were willing to share and give your perspective on it, um, because you know what you were going through, and I think it's beautiful that you got help and whatever reason you got help, your child helped you get help because you want to be a better person than for them than you ever want to be. They're so motivating, children.
Yeah, and it's one of the biggest points in the book is that you can't fix what you won't face. And I kind of, grandfather had it. I recognized it, and it was one of those things you just had to grab and you had to face it, or there was no way of rectifying a situation.
Let's talk a little bit about the fuck the standard movement. What does that mean?
We're taught to live life by a specific set of rules. You know, You go to your elementary school, you go to high school. What happens after high school? You take out a loan, you go to college. Then you take out a loan and buy a car. Then now, I mean, Christ, with the way weddings are or anything like that, you take out a loan to have a $100,000 wedding. And you take out the loan to buy the mortgage, to get the mortgage to buy the house, excuse me. And then hopefully you retire with enough time before you die to enjoy a couple of years. It's breaking that standard. It's breaking the roles that we're put in. And we don't even know who we're put there by. That's the worst part about it. We're not, sure, partially it's put there by the family you're raised by. They have their set of standards that they want you to go to college, they want you to do this, they want you to do that. But outside of the family environment, I don't think I could explain who actually put us in this script that we're living when we decide to just fold and not do what we're told, but for lack of a better term, do what we're told. We live with debt. That's the first and foremost. And debt, in my opinion, it's a form of a modern form of slavery. You're a slave to the bank. They charge you these interest rates where you're never going to pay it back unless you have a slight windfall of money.
Right.
But I think the bigger thing than debt is, what is the definition of success? Now, we come from different dynamics. Your definition of success may be completely different than what my definition of success is. You may want to own the yacht. You may want to own the Lamborghini. You may want to have the mansion. You may want to live in wherever. You may want to live on the water in the south of France. Who cares? Whatever it is, that's your definition. Why do I have to live by that definition? There's nothing other than being told that's successful. Like me personally, as long as I don't run out of money and I have a roof over my head, I can play golf a couple times with my son a month. And everybody I'm pointing behind me because my house, everybody's behind me going to bed. But I have smiles on my wife and my kids' faces and we're comfortable. I feel successful. I don't need to drive the Lamborghini. I don't need to, travel 6, 8, 10 times a year. It's not me. I'd rather take my kids to a Yankee game and just
create a memory.
Yeah. And I think that was one of my biggest things I regret. I was writing, I'm looking to put my own podcast out, so I was writing a couple things down today. And I think one of the things I look back on the most is the fact that I put material things over memories. And that was a huge flip for me. I worried about how I was going to get my kids the next thing, not being in the moment with them. And that was a big, big own your shit moment for me that really changed me when it came to that side of it. Because if you think about it, we finance our own self-worth in some instances with what we purchase. There's a reason that everything we buy has large logos on the front of it for the company you buy it from. Let me ask you an honest question. You buy a sweatshirt at Walmart, you buy a sweatshirt from a $600 shop. Is it really that much of a difference?
Well, I have this thing where I don't like to buy things with logos on it.
That's perfect.
I try not to. But I have a couple of favorites here and there, because I am human.
But I laugh because we're both obviously wearing glasses. Did you know there's a company, Luxottica? Most people don't notice they make 98% of the frames for eyeglasses in the world.
Oh, really?
Company. So the same pair that I grab off of my insurance rack when I go to the eye doctor that look identical to a Gucci pair that are $900 more.
Yeah.
It's the exact same frame with a logo put on the side. And that's part of the script or the standard that we've been given, is that for some reason those glasses are better than the other because they have a name.
Right. I see out of them just the same. When somebody was, I have a car, right? And gets me from one place to place. And I have a friend who's really into cars, and he's asking me all these questions, and I'm like, it's a car. It drives. That's all it needs to do for me. Period. I don't know the answers to your question. I don't know the engine it has. I don't care. I'm not a race car driver. And it gets me from point A to point B. And it's a nice color. That's all I need to know. That's it.
I hit the gas pedal and it goes forward, and the
Yes.
wheels turn, and I get to work every morning. I'm good to go. I have the same. I haven't had a car payment since 2002.
That's awesome.
I've gotten out of the whole, the lease every 3 years and all that. Purchased a car. If it breaks down, if I can't get it repaired, I'm buying something else that I can purchase with cash and get away from that payment. It was just the lease, the 3-year rotation on a lease is another thing that we've been taught is socially acceptable and something we should be doing. When, as you said, get you from point A to point B, you're where you need to be.
Right. That's the only place I need it. And, I mean, a car's a car, but it just doesn't do it for me. Anyway, so Rob, it's been great having you. I have 2 more questions for you. When someone wants to learn more from you, how can they find you?
The book is on Amazon. It's FCK the Script by R.P. McCarthy. I didn't use my full first name. I don't know why. If they're looking for the community or the Own Your Shit Challenge workbook I put together, that's on Stan's store, stan.store/FTS25. And coming in January, there will be the FCK the Standard podcast coming out. I've actually started finalizing that today. I'll be hopefully recording through the end of the year and releasing on the normal, Apple, Spotify, and everything right after the first of the year.
That's going to be awesome. I look forward to listening to your podcast. And a piece of advice that you want to give the audience if they're going through a difficult time to keep them going and moving forward.
One of the things we do is compare ourselves to other people. And this is a Jordan Peterson quote, so I'm not taking any credit for it. We compare ourselves to other people on a daily basis. The only person that anyone should ever be comparing themselves to is the person that they look in the mirror every morning and have they moved the needle on one thing to improve themselves daily.
That's awesome. I like that. And thanks for being my guest today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. This is Lisa Manzo, and you've just listened to another episode of the Phoenix Mind podcast, and I'll see you on the next one.
This is the Phoenix Mind, where the fire finds. Together we rise, transform our lives. So subscribe, share the flame.